This is the second section, part B, plant interaction and limitation of growth, and we will continue our discussion about some of the growth issues that trees do have. The first one, of course, is the whole idea of photosynthesis and respiration. And what I certainly want you to be able to do is be able to clearly understand what respiration is and photosynthesis. Okay, so these two terms are very important, and what I'd like you to do is certainly go over a little refresher video, and that video is located at this particular YouTube site, and try it out. It gives a good explanation. It's about 4 minutes long and gets to the point. You don't need to know these formulas. I have here these chemical formulas of the process. Just understand the terminology around photosynthesis and respiration, a very critical factor in tree growth. So, as discussed, one of the things is we're going to certainly look at sunlight. We're going to look at water, the mineral nutrients issue that are restrictive to plants, suitable temperatures. We will just address carbon dioxide and oxygen just on a very superficial level. So all these things we're going to talk about in this particular video. First of all, in regards to sunlight. It's quite obvious that the more light you have, the further increase you have in photosynthesizing, and so the question a lot of times is focusing on trees. How much light does a tree really need? And there's been studies done, and there is a compensation point. In other words, at a point where leaves, how little light can leaves need to stay alive, and what has been found, it's down to 5%. That means the leaves in the shade can survive with as little as 5% light. It doesn't mean that much growing is occurring, but they can survive with as little as 5% light. Now, what you will find that species that are very intolerant to shade, for example Pinus banksiana, which is jack pine, they need to around 30% of full sunlight. If they have less than that, the needles die, and consequently the branches eventually fall off, the finer branching. If you have a very tolerant tree, like for example Acer saccharum, which is hard maple, it can survive with as little as 5% sunlight. So it's a very important aspect of tree growth, is the amount of light that's available. One of the things is that what does this photosynthesis do? Well, it keeps the leaves, the branches, and the roots alive, and those are all factors. It's so crucial. And this is pretty. Here I have a picture, and it's kind of neat. This is a picture from the front of some nannyberry, and you can see how the leaves are arranged. And a lot of people think the leaves just kind of grow randomly, but if you look from the back of the very same leaves, the picture, you can see how the leaves have arranged themselves so they aren't stacked on top of each other, but are in a position to get almost the maximum amount of light. So it looks like an efficient solar panel almost from that end. And that's how trees arrange their leaves and needles, is to get the most efficient amount of light onto that leaf surface for photosynthesis. Okay? So it's very efficient. Here we're going to talk about now is the actual how much water does a tree need. And we've already addressed this, is that what trees, we've already talked about this in the earlier session in regards to that different trees have different can grow into different types of conditions, in different conditions, excuse me. And one of the most amazing things is, how do trees grow on these drier sites, right? And these like, what makes them be able to grow there? Well, how do they get water? Because all trees need water, but some are able to pull it out better. And what it is that they've measured the water tension, that some trees can able to suck the water literally out of the soil, and it's measured in bars, and one bar is roughly around 14 pounds per square inch, 14 psi. So if you kind of think about it, it's like to suck up a milkshake through a thick milkshake in a straw takes about 7 psi to do that. So literally a root can suck up about 12 times that amount of pressure to suck up water in between the soil particles. So it can really, some trees, and this is like a lodgepole pine or jack pine, has that capability. A spruce would not have that capability. So it's really amazing how efficient and how kind of water tension the roots can overcome. The last one is the evapotranspiration rate. That's very crucial also of a tree, is how is it its ability to release water. For example, willows are very efficient at releasing vast amounts of water through evapotranspiration. The next one is about nutrients, and for nutrients, it's very, very crucial that the nutrients are available so that the leaves, phloem, buds, and the root tips and reproductive organs of the tree can grow effectively. The best place for a tree to grow is roughly, so if these are all the different key elements that are required in the soil, but if we look at the elements that are available, and for example, we could be talking about nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, sulfur, calcium, magnesium, iron, and so on, boron to a lighter, smaller level. These particular elements are available to trees in different amounts based on their pH. And if you look at the bottom here, you can see that there's the pH levels shown. And here we have pH from 4, which is very acidic, to pH 10, very basic. And where do trees like to grow? Well, if you look at this diagram here, trees generally grow between 4 and to 8, the pH. That's generally where they grow. And so you can see here, that's the key area. And now, based on the different species that exist, you will have different types of requirements. If it's more like a pine tree, then we see it growing more on acidic soils. Okay, if it's more of a hardwood tree, you would find it more at this end, more basic. Okay, and that's what you will find throughout the forest, is at different pH levels. In southern Ontario, our soils are more basic, and the more north you go, the more acidic are the soils, and that is probably why we have in the boreal a stronger presence of conifers. And here, this is a picture of a buddy here. Looks like red-green, and it says at the bottom, a $5 tree in a $10 hole equals a $50 end product. What does he mean? Just putting a tree in a hole is not what counts, but you have to know what the soil is. So good quality soil will make a $5 tree a $50 tree, and that is so true. And that's why soils is such a crucial part of growing successful trees, as this smiling chap can tell you. Another thing that we're going to talk about a lot is in this course is about what happens underground in regards to the how do microorganisms influence the tree intake of nutrients. And the mycorrhizal fungi are very, very important, and they are key in having successful forest growth. And they also involved in the element of nitrogen fixing, and certainly are key in the decomposition of plant matter down to its basic elements, so that not we, but the trees can use those elements for their own growth. So other limiting factors that we have, or this may be a good example of other limiting factors, this little diagram, picture I took, and you can get a kind of a appreciation here, is that if we look at here, we have a stream, okay, and then way over here we have drier area. And if you go and if you look at the change from here to here in respect to the forest types, what you will see is that you have hardwoods, then you get a little moister location, and you're ending up in tamaracks and spruces. And then as you progressively get more and more into moist site, you can see the occasional shallow-rooted spruce, and then right down to sparse trees and to no trees, and just some cattails and so on. And why the difference is, a lot of people think that it's because it's too wet, there's too much water. And the truth of the matter is what it is it's the lack of oxygen. That's the truth of the matter, because the roots are not able to have oxygen. In other words, the roots cannot grow underwater. And as you progressively get from trees which are deep rooted to shallow rooted, they find less and less ideal locations to grow. And occasionally you will see trees growing here and there. What that implies is there's probably a little hummock or a little hill of dirt, or a tree fell and some soil on top, and that allows the seedlings to grow on top and be a little higher than where the water is located, and therefore have some success of growth to a limited degree. So it's just to give you an example of some of the challenges of trees where they grow. And again, as I have recapped before or discussed before, trees don't like to grow on undesirable sites. And a lot of people believe that spruce like to grow in wet locations. No, they just have a shallow rooting system which allows them to compete better on those more moist sites. So the definition of a growing space, we'll be talking about this more, but each tree uses the growth factors discussed until its growth becomes limited by one or more of those things. So it isn't just the physical space, it's the available nutrients, light, and the minimal amount of root competition. So each species reacts differently to these factors of competition, and how the trees use the photosynthate, which is in other words the product for shoot extension, root extension, height growth, limb spread, and insect and disease resistance, depends on the species. Some species have excellent ability for shoot extension and root extension very quickly, so they can outcompete others, and others have, and their strength is in the insects and disease resistance, for example, like a cedar. And some species have the ability to endure low light levels, for example, and survive until other ones die, and then continue growth. For example, an excellent example would be hard maple can survive for long periods of time in low light levels in the understory until some trees in the overstory die, and then they can be released and continue to grow.